So good afternoon. Thanks for coming. As you all know, in March 2025, the Organization of American States will select a new Secretary General to serve a 5-year term and replace Luis Almagro, who has served 2 consecutive terms. The Georgetown Americas Institute is extremely pleased to welcome Ruben Ramirez Lezcano, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Paraguay, for a conversation about his background, views on the hemisphere, and his vision for the OAS as a running candidate for the position of Secretary General. Ruben began his diplomatic career on August 8, 1989, and after an extensive career passing through various ministerial levels, he was promoted to the rank of ambassador in the Diplomatic and Consular Corps of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 2004. He has occupied key roles in Paraguay's embassies in Argentina, Ecuador, and France, permanent missions in Uruguay, Switzerland, and France, and consulates in the United States. In 2006, he was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs by President Nicanor Duarte Frutos and held the position until 2008. From there, he moved to the private sphere where he held executive positions, and he also was the executive director of Paraguay at CAF. After some years working in the private banking and financial sector of Paraguay, on August 15, 2023, Ambassador Ramirez Lezcano was reappointed by President Santiago Peña as Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Paraguay, a position he holds today. We're extremely pleased to discuss Ruben's vision for the hemisphere. As I said, what Paraguay has accomplished in the last 2 decades, but in the first year of Peña's administration, Paraguay has significantly has been, I think, a very important voice in Latin American issues, punching significantly above its size. Recently, Paraguay became, on the financial sphere, investment grade, basically showing many years of extremely good macroeconomic management, and also being, I would say, a key point in a complex region, trying to forge important consensus in the Southern Cone. Let me, before I pass the microphone to Ruben to give his introductory remarks, just acknowledge the presence also of the Ministry of Finance, who was with us, Carlos Fernandez, maybe 6 months ago, also giving a very interesting talk here to students at Georgetown University, and recognizing, the very strong partnership we have had with the government. Also welcoming President Santiago Peña when he was a candidate and then when he was a president. So we're extremely glad to host you here, and I'll give you the floor, Minister.
Thank you. Good afternoon for everybody. Thank you very much for your remarks. Really, it's a pleasure to be here at the Georgetown University. Paraguay is a country that really share the principles and values with the United States: freedom, democracy, human rights. And that is the reason why, since President Santiago Peña started his government, we realized a foreign policy not based in ideologies, based in the priority of the integration of our country. As you know, our hemisphere is the most peaceful region in the world. We are in front of wars: Israel, Hamas, Russia, Ukraine. We are facing so many challenges in the relation among Taiwan and China. And really, we have more than 20 wars in the world and 120 confrontations inside several countries. The challenge for our region is to face the risk in several issues. Health, we confront the COVID-19 a few years ago, and the impact is still on our development challenges as inflation, external debt, the situation of job creation, and the whole world economy is under those challenges. We are facing the immigration trouble, and that have several origins. We are in front the food security issue. We are in front of the several risks on security because the transnational crime organizations, the trafficking of people, drugs, the laundering money, and also the corruption. We're facing challenges in human rights and especially in democracy. In our region, what happened today with Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, we are facing also the cybersecurity issue, the challenge of how to deal with AI, the challenge of the climate change. And the most important is that our hemisphere is in front of several opportunities facing those risks. And first of all, I would like to explain about the Paraguayan foreign policy. As I say, we share values with the United States. Paraguay is the only country in South America that have diplomatic relations with Taiwan. And that is not because we are uninspired to be allied to the United States. That is inspiring those principles that I talked before, remarks, those issues about our foreign policy, our principles and values, freedom, democracy, human rights. But also because Taiwan is a country that is showing us the way to growth with those values. And even if confronting several difficulties today, is a country that is showing us, cooperating with us, and showing the way to develop our technology opportunity to develop our country on this issue. They say always nearshoring issues about this, but the most important is that we share those principles. Secondly, we have to be very clear and transparent. We support strongly Israel since its creation as a state. In 1947, Paraguay was a country in the United Nations vote for the Israel state creation. And up to now, we still strongly supporting Israel in its health defense right in the war against Hamas and the terrorism. And in this way, we are moving our embassy next December from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem for the second time. And that is a very important step in our relation with Israel and recognizing its capital. Thirdly, we are supporting Ukraine. Supporting Ukraine because those principles. We have to remember that 160 years ago, Paraguay faced a war, the Triple Alliance War, that give us results of we lost the 60% of our territory and the 90% of our male population, 90% of our male population. And since this time, Paraguay start step by step growing without international cooperation. There wasn't opportunities to create the conditions to support Paraguay. And that is an issue only to remember from where we started, since the first country independent in the hemisphere in 1811. And since this time, Paraguay created the best condition for the development of the country. President Peña always said, and remember us this issue, that we have to know from where we are coming and to know where we can go. And especially, we are very committed to go with those principles that I said. The most important issue today is that we are facing those challenges and looking the reality from where we are coming, where we understand to go, is looking that Latin America is the region less integrated on trade and on several issues. All our countries are exporting to developed countries raw materials. The most important market in the world is today China. And China is very active in Latin America. And we call the attention on that. We can only export raw materials to this country. And we have unbalanced trade with this country. Even Paraguay, that doesn't have diplomatic relation with China, we import around 5 billion of dollars per year from China. And we don't export anything. We export through our neighbors because they don't accept directly our products. But all our neighborhood are trading with them, but trading with raw material. No one can export product with add value to China, for example. And that is an important issue that we have to keep in mind, that how to deal with our integration in the hemisphere, because the only countries that exchange product with add value are the countries of the hemisphere, the Latin American countries. We have several integration institutions, Mercosur, ALADI, we have CARICOM, we have Andean Community, and NAFTA. But unfortunately, the trade among our country is the less integrated in the world, I repeat. Only the 22% of trade exchange is among Latin American countries. In comparison, in Europe, 90%. In the Asian country, 85%. In North America, practically 75%. And that represents a challenge because we are weaker. Less than 25% of exchange in Latin American country on trade. Third, to understand that the region of Mercosur, for example, is the only area in the world that can produce food for more people than inhabitants that we have. In this example, Paraguay have 6.5 million inhabitants, and we export for 100 million people food, soybean, beef, and other agricultural products. That represents a very important opportunity to share those issues. And that represents also the challenge that our hemisphere needs to be most integrated. Paraguay participated in the Inter-American dialogue since the initial in 1947 and is member of the foundation of OEAS in 1948. Never Paraguay occupied any position in the OEAS. as SG or secretary or any position, relevant position in OEAS. But it was very active in the integration and the inter-American dialogue. Then we participate in several discussions and in the construction of the integration in our region. And President Peña says today, I am promoting our hemisphere integration and the global insertion of Paraguay. And that won't be only a statement. We need to prove our commitment on that. And he proposed to me as candidate, saying to me, Ruben, we need to show our commitment. And we need to put you as a candidate to the Secretary General of OEAS because we need to change the multilateral system. We are very critical on the United Nations system because it's not able to create conditions for the peace. We are criticizing, and here we have our maximum authorities on economy, the magicians that gave us the investment grade, and really we are also discussing about how to deal with the multilateral financial organization. We are discussing also WTO, the rules of trade. We are facing protectionism, and that is another very important challenge. And the world needs a global management because the geopolitical tensions are in reality. Well, in this regard, President Peña said, well, let's start it. We have an organization that looks like our education program, established in the 19th century, thinking for the 21st century. And next year, we will end the first quarter of this century. Wow. We are facing the first quarter of our century finishing, and we have only an opportunity to create and to modernize our multilateral organizations and instrument for the development. I am proposing 4 step pillars for OEAS. The first one, democracy. We need to strengthen institutions. We need to strengthen the system of democracy. Why? Because we are facing several challenges in our countries. The new generation doesn't believe in democracy. And only looking the results of the Vanderbilt University with Latino Barometro, most of the Latin American people doesn't believe on democracy. And we are facing the autocracy growing in our region. What happened in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba, and other countries that is maybe more weak on the democracy system. That is also the education. We need to strengthen the education, strengthen the parties in each country, because the party is the part of the solution, the political parties. Secondly, and I can go deep on those issues, on education, etc., but to be my first remarks, I would like to say you the second and no less important is about human rights. The human right is the priority for our hemisphere. We need to work to strengthen it, the human rights in our hemisphere. Because without democracy and without human rights protection and promotion in our country, and without the third pillar, development, we need to create jobs. We need to grow our economy. We have the opportunity to do it. The world needs that we produce. The world needs our human capacity to produce. And those three pillars, if we don't strengthen those pillars, we have a very, I say, sad result, immigration. The people are looking in other countries, developed countries, the opportunity for economic reason, for political reason, and also looking for the human rights. And we need to create the condition to stop the immigration and to growth in each country. And the fourth pillar is the important value that we are giving to security. And security is an issue in which we are working very hard in Paraguay. Is a priority of the policy of President Peña government, because we say without security, there are not sustainable development. How you will get those pillars? Through the dialogue. We have facing today the polarization inside the countries. I've been chief of delegation of the election as observer of OEAs to the elections in Peru and in Brazil. We face the polarization in those countries. They are very important countries for our hemisphere. And really, those polarization is not only inside those countries. In the last election in the United States also, Biden, Trump. Well, we face next month a new election here in United States, and we are facing also the polarization in the United States. And this polarization, we are looking also in the multilateral system. We have the position of Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico among how to deal with the regime of Maduro. And we have another 17 countries that are looking for a solution. But we always say we won't resolve the situation of Venezuela only with a statement. We need actions. We need strategy. We need policies. And we need to create the condition to discuss. And OEAS is the only organization that can be able to deal with those challenges. I'm totally available to respond your answers, and thank you very much for convening this meeting. Thank you very much.
So, I mean, Minister, you gave a very extended and clear explanation of the achievements and how Paraguay has positioned itself in some of the key issues that are facing Latin America, the Caribbean, and the world today. You also highlighted, I mean, the main pillars that need to be strengthened in the inter-American system, and how through those pillars we can achieve better outcomes for Latin American and Caribbean countries. And maybe you could expand a little bit more on why Paraguay and why yourself, given the experience that you have, could be the ideal candidates to lead the OAS in this very difficult period in the next 5 years?
Thank you for this question. First of all, because we have a very young and strong leader as a president, Santiago Peña in Paraguay. His leadership represents today the opportunity to establish the bridge in the dialogue among the countries with different ideologies. We are making a bridge between in the dialogue in Mercosur, for example, between the President Milei and the President Lula. We are bringing the dialogue with different countries in the world. Even I have been the opportunity, I've been talking with the Chinese government. And I said Paraguay is not a country that could resign its relation with Taiwan. And we are able to establish with China a commercial relation, consular relation, or diplomatic relation, but without any kind of condition. And that represents that we are always promoting those values. Secondly, we have the assets. As Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have the dialogue not only with my colleagues. I have the opportunity to establish very personal relation with many presidents in our hemisphere. And that represents the opportunity to establish a dialogue, a direct dialogue, to discuss about the priorities that we can achieve for the OAS. Paraguay is the most open economy in our hemisphere after Mexico, because Mexico have a trade with the United States. You know, we have to understand the size of our economy is not big like as Mexico, Brazil. And knowing that Paraguay is the most open economy in our hemisphere, that represents also that we understand the challenge of the integration, not only in economy, in security, in health. We know the challenge of integration on education, and that represents also the opportunity to build the priorities on those issues in which we need to increase the capacity of growth of our hemisphere. Thirdly, we are quite different from Caribbean countries. I said no. President Peña always mentioned the sentence of the writer Augusto Roa Bastos. Paraguay is an island surrounded by land. We are a landlocked country, and that represents also the opportunity to understand how feel an island. And then we don't have any commitment in ideology. We are thinking always the common value that we have and principle that we have to build to grow our region. In the last 50 years, Latin American were losing face the Asian countries. Today, we need to grow almost 30% per year, our GDP, to arrive to the Taiwan of South Korea or Japan economy. That represents a huge challenge. And that represents also a huge opportunity to develop our region. And in this way, we are saying today, well, let's share our experience, let's talk about our priorities, and OAS is the most important instrument to develop those integration. Today, we have the position of Europe countries around the world. America doesn't have. Every country is treating differently the challenge of the climate change, for example. We have a political approach from the United States. We have a reality approach for the Caribbean country, and a approach from Latin American country, because we are facing the instrument of protectionism, putting conditions for import from our countries to those countries that started the climate change. And we need to discuss those issues. And EU is very well represented around the world. But individually, Latin America is having different approach and no a common view on this discussion. That is an example.
I think your last example is extremely good in saying, I mean, it's Latin America, I wouldn't say it has been absent, but a clear regional position on what Latin American, the Latin American countries' approach to the climate change framework that we are building, that actually reflects the commitment of the region to fight this common challenge, but at the same time to have a framework that reflects the characteristics and the heterogeneity, the difference in development, et cetera, that we have in the region, and also being a region that it's already contributing significantly to fight climate change. I mean, your country, I mean, you have a surplus on renewable energy generation, for example. As you said, I mean, when we turn towards food security, you contribute 10 times or 15 times X what you consume. And in that sense, I think the region needs to see that the framework that we're building also reflects some of the shortcomings of development that we have in the region, and we are not overtaxed or over punished. And in those policies, some of those things are reflected on, as you say, trade policies, and also on policies implemented by the multilateral financing system. No, that as you were saying, it would be great if Latin America, after the leadership of the OAS, etc., talks with a common voice to try to shape the system the way it will benefit our region. So with that, I think I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I think you mentioned the issue of democracy, that it's very important, and I'm sure many of the students will have questions on the role of the OAS in Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, et cetera, and what could be done better, or what should continue to be done to push. Although you mentioned, I mean, Latin America is one of the most democratic regions in the world. I mean, we are backsliding a bit on democracy, and I think we need to work on that. So with that, I will open the floor for questions. We will try to prioritize questions from students. And as it happened with Carlos Fernandez 6 months ago, we have you. So welcome. Yeah.
Alberto Maresca from the Center for Latin America Studies. Many thanks for your presentation, Minister. I have a question. I think it's very noble, the principle of human rights being applied to Paraguayan foreign policy. I just would like to understand how defending Israel's action in the Middle East have any sort of connection with human rights. How moving an embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem has anything to do with human rights, and how coherently can Paraguay stand against the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but in favor of Israel bombing of Gaza and Lebanon? Thank you very much.
Really, I understand your question. Paraguay is facing that the position of Israel is quite relevant on health defense. We understand that the terrorism is not the way to deal with the rights of the people. And really, Israel is a very important ally to Paraguay to explain how the terrorism is doing bad for the global system and the global integration. I understand that several countries are looking the situation of Gaza, but at the same time, the issue of Israel is quite important to put the note and to explain that the country has the right to self-defense after the attack of Hamas in Israel in last October 2023.
There's a couple of other questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. I am Carlos. I am a freshman in the SFS, and I am from Bolivia. And on the question of, for example, regional integration, I would like to know how can we further regional integration in Latin America, especially given not only ideological, but the geographical challenges of this. For example, Bolivia, just like Paraguay, is also a landlocked nation. And the topic of the access to the sea is something that has been really important for Bolivian discourse for many decades, even centuries at this point. So how can we surpass geographical challenges in order to promote this integration, given, for example, the length of the Amazon jungle in Brazil, the Andes, or the state of landlocked countries like Bolivia and Paraguay? And how can we also go beyond ideological positions these governments may have? For example, the Bolivian government has really different positions from Chile, for example, like Paraguay right now, or for example, even in Argentina or Venezuela. So how can we go beyond the geographical and political differences between these countries to promote multilateral and multi-regional cooperation?
Thank you. Really, we are part in the United Nations of the landlocked country. They are an undersecretary of the United Nations to treat about landlocked country. Bolivia is still looking for the access to the sea through the dispute with Chile. And that is the reason why the Bolivia up to now doesn't accept that it's a landlocked country. But we are facing also through our natural resources. We have the most important system of fluvial navigation through the Hidrovía Paraguay-Paraná that gave 3,200 kilometers of river. That is the most important logistics system to transport up to now 60 million of tons of products from our 5 countries integrating this system of navigation. But also at the same time, we are looking on trade facilitation. We are looking, explaining that the cost of a landlocked country to the market access is more expensive than the same city in the border of the other country that have sea ports, 60% more expensive. And we show those studies what represent to be a landlocked country. We have to work on those rules to give special and differential treatment to those landlocked countries that we are in the world. And there is example in the world like Switzerland is a landlocked country, but he arrived to achieve the most important treatment of their neighbors. They also have challenges on economic integration. They are not part of the European Union. But that represents also an example how to deal with those issues. And really, we are working hard on that through multilateral institutions. How can OES approach to this issue? That is quite important to give the support to those 5 countries to strengthen the institutional capacity building through the treatment that we have in the system of Hidrovía Paraguay-Paraná, for example, the treatment of Santa Cruz de la Sierra, or the treatment of free access to the sea through the agreement of the sea that we have in the United Nations. There are several opportunities in which OES, through the pillar of development, can cooperate on this issue.
There's another question. Those two questions, then we'll get back to you.
Thank you. My name is Enrique Arevalo. I'm a master's student here at Georgetown. One of the main issues facing the OAS is the lack of consistent funding. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on how to address that challenge if you become Secretary General.
Yes. The first of all, we are discussing now the budget for the next Secretary General, and it's a challenge. I have here in front of me the Minister of Economy and Finance. He is advising me how to deal with us. But our challenge is we need to work with the other multilateral institutions. There are several superpositions on their activities. For example, today we are looking that institution, financial institution, IDB, CAF, are working in the agenda of security because they need to put the money, they need to finance governments, and they need to create the best project for financing. I think that the only hemispheric institution that have the mandate is OEAS. We need to work together with those institutions. We need to achieve a common view with the country members to go with the project. For example, in the General Assembly of OEAS this year in June in Asunción, we proposed the lemma of security and integration for sustainable development. The security issue is a very, very important point and priority for all the Latin American countries and also for North American countries. We have a side event. We met 30 ministers of security. They call interior, government, security, intelligence, etc. We have had 30. But in the last 20 years, it wasn't any kind of meeting at the hemispheric level to discuss the security issue. And the security agenda is very, very important for every country. For example, Paraguay don't produce cocaine. Since the President Peña started his government, we arrived to keep 3 children of cocaine. One of them, I didn't see any in any kind of picture or Netflix, 4,000 tons of cocaine going from Paraguay to Europe. That was arrested in Paraguay. That represents how many challenges we have to face against the crime organizations in our own region. The issue of corruption, the issue of trafficking of drugs, but also of persons. The issue of fighting against corruption. Those are very important points that we need to face. And the multilateral system need to face in the same point. In the government, and here is I repeat, is the Minister of Economy and Finance, we got several institutions doing the same project. And that represents a lot of money of the budget and the effort of the contributor. I mean, we have several challenges, but we need to be very, to build a line in which we have to work very close together with other institutions. And we have an inflation of institutions. There are CELAC, UNASUR, and Latin American integration system. There are so many institutions that is quite expensive for our budget. We need to focus those efforts in prioritizing what program really are the best for the development of our country, and we have to build a common view on those issues, and therefore have to be concentrated. And all the tools for the government that are those multilateral institutions have to be aligned on those issues.
Thank you, Minister. My name is Jessica. I'm a master's student in foreign service. I wanted to ask you, what is Paraguay's position regarding the FTA agreement between Mercosur and China? And if that agreement was eventually signed, how would it affect Paraguay and Taiwan's bilateral relations? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We are able to negotiate FTA with China. We have had a meeting this year in Montevideo a month ago. And our position is clear. Paraguay is the most open country on trade. And as I said at the beginning, we are able to establish relations with China without conditions. I mean, China and Paraguay were members of the WTO. There are not conflicts on rules. There are no conflicts in trade policies. And we propose China, well, let's establish commercial relations. Let's establish consular or diplomatic, but without conditions. Because our relation with Taiwan, that is the most important for Paraguay. We are working very close with the Indo-Pacific countries. We are working very close with several countries, and we are able to do with China. The challenge to Mercosur in the deal with China is that China only import raw materials, food. And we are not in condition to export products with add value to China. And the trade balance with China is several deficitaries with Mercosur. That represents for us a very important challenge, and negotiations have to be in this way very clear, and Paraguay don't have an opposition to this agreement if we have the same treatment the fourth country that we compose today, Mercosur.
Oh, there are no other students, yeah. Ambassador.
Canciller, that was wonderful, your presentation. I'm a former diplomat too, but the problem is I'm 90 years old.
What's the problem?
Still alive. And my last assignment was U.S. Ambassador in Paraguay, a country I love. You said something about it, though, that really moved my mind. You talked about the wonderful president of yours, President Peña, and he's a young man. He's younger than you are, sir.
Absolutely.
He's well younger than I am. But you talked about the importance of young people to take that wonderful country the proper way to the future and not just bother it the way I would, maybe. So would you talk a little more about the youth of Paraguay and the importance of their role to the future of that wonderful nation? When I'm going to be in heaven, I don't know where you're going to be, sir.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Really, I appreciate very much. The President Santiago Peña is 45 years old. Here, my both colleagues, we are the oldest in the cabinet. And really, Paraguay is a very young country. The average of age is the 26 years old of our population. The 74% is younger than 40 years old. And that represents a huge opportunity, but a very important challenge. And that is the reason, because the priority is education. That is the most important policy of the president and the Peña government today. We need to improve our people well educated. And congratulations for those students here that I'm sure that you are making enormous effort to be educated in a very good university that Georgetown. Really, we appreciate your effort. And that is the most important value. Nobody can retire for you your experience and your tools on education. That is the most important legacy as a parent that we can give to our sons. And the government is very committed, President Peña, on that.
You had a question? Excuse me. So there's a question on the back.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Fabiola Martinez. I am from Paraguay, de Areguá. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you. I met Minister Valdovinos also and President Peña when they were here. I guess my question is related to everything that you just talked about. You touched on education, human rights, democracy, which are the pillars of the OAS. Regardless of the situation in our country, and I think what you just said about President Peña making education its first priority, I don't see that. I don't see that genuinely. And I see a lot of issues with like regional integration with our position in the world. But regardless of all of that, if you look at the report of the OAS last year, most of the mandates that have actually been achieved have been in multidimensional security. So you said there hasn't been any meetings or anything in terms of security in the hemisphere in the past year or so, or more than that. So I'm wondering why then do we see that democracy in the OAS report has a lot of current open mandates, a lot of duplicates, even more probably, and very low achievement on what actually we say that the OAS is there for, being that democracy, human rights, etc. In terms of human rights, I just want to link the education part because I think it actually is very important. As I had said to President Peña and Valdovinos when they were here, we do need to prioritize our education. And we do need to invest in the young people. Like you're saying, our country has a huge potential, especially under the conditions that we are right now. And we need the human capital and we need our people to do the job to actually sustainably develop, not by foreign direct and indirect investment, not by bringing people from outside. So I understand there's a lot of challenges there. I don't mean to say you guys are not doing anything because I understand there's a lot of complexities, but I think that in order for us to actually be able to develop for the good of our people, we need to account ourselves first. And we need to be very open about the situations in our country as well as the others. Because it's easy to say we don't support what Venezuela is doing, but we are number 2 in corruption, just under Venezuela. So how are we excluding countries that perhaps, you know, the bigger power that is contributing most, like how would you make sure not to follow an agenda? Because since 2001, when we established the Democratic Charter in the OAS, it has been said that all countries need to be democratic. And it's easy to throw the word democracy out there, but the realities and the behaviors of our governments are very different. So I don't know, maybe just comment. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, compatriota. Really, it's a pleasure to know that you are studying here. Congratulations. Your effort is quite important for you, but for our country also. You make several questions, and I will try to answer each one of them. On education, the President Peña started a very important steps, and we understand and we have the same feeling in the government, the sentiment of urgency. We need to deal with those challenges immediately. And since he started, We are working very hard on that. First of all, the program Hambre Cero. We are looking for the food, the security, the food security, the alimentation. The most vulnerable people of our country is the priority. And we are working hard on that. The Hambre Cero program represents the opportunity to give a food to our children, the most vulnerable sector. That is important because between the 0 and 7 years, the formation of the people is quite important. We are working to change the education program. We got a program built in the 19th century to the 21st that is talking about when we started. It's not easy at all. You say, and you have reason, I don't see the results. We will see the results in 20 years. Those are policies that have to start since the start, a generation. You can see the results, for example, that through the BECAL, the program of a student outside the country, we have at this time, it was created by President Peña when he was Minister of Finance. Hacienda, we said at this time in Paraguay. We have 6,000 people educating in the Ivy League University, financed by the government. We send 400 young women and boys to the University of Taiwan to be educated in computer engineering and also in AA. We developed the Taiwan University to develop our ecosystem on technology. We are giving all the resources to the universities and working not only in the education program framework, but we are working also in the infrastructure, buildings, but also in technology, changing the program, changing the objectives that we are looking for. We started the government 14 months ago, and that represents a lot of jobs that we are doing today, and they are a huge opportunity to increase the better education. The creation of jobs is the most important way to deal with the challenge of poverty. The subsidize is through the well-remunerated work and the opportunity to work. The Paraguayans like very much to work. And that is the way in which we are making all the effort today. Thirdly, since the President Peña started his government, he called all the powers, the Congress, the judiciary power, and the Attorney General, and also the, ¿cómo se dice? The controller, to establish a program. We have a program to fight against corruption. We are working hard on the bureaucracy, to disarm the bureaucracy, to be very transparent, to create a government, and really we have all the best commitment to fight against corruption. It's not easy at all. You can achieve all the results from one day to another. We are working and fighting against corruption. I know your urgency. I know how you feel, because we share your feeling. And that is not an statement. That is our reality.
Well, let's take one final question. And
Perfect, thank you.
here. Kate, here. Raise your hand, thanks.
Good afternoon, Minister. I am also Paraguayan. I am 26 years old. I am from Lambaré, Paraguay. I am a fellow of the U.S. Department of State working here in Washington. I know that we are facing a lot of challenge in Paraguay, but I am seeing like the efforts that the President Santiago Peña is making, that the government is making here in our country. But I want to go back to the climate change issues. The next month we have the COP28 in Baku. So I want to hear your opinion about like the position of Paraguay in this that important event.
Thank you very much for your question. Paraguay is the most important, is given the most important value to the climate change. With the environment policy in Paraguay is very clear. We are promoting, but you have to understand that the Paraguay is the country that less contribute to the CO2 emission. We apport less than 0.1%. We have the 17% of our territory of forest. We consume the 100% of energy renewable, and we export the 80% of our renewable electricity production to our neighbors. For Paraguay, it's quite important that developed country take into account that they have a lot of commitment to fight against the climate change. And that represents that we have to share the challenges, and we're able to share those challenges. And also, I repeat, the education is the first step, but creating the institutions in our region is quite important. For example, today, European Union doesn't accept our institution for give the qualification of our products. Well, why they don't produce the conditions to develop those institutions in our country? And I think that through the OES, we can do it that. Given all the conditions for the institutional reputation that we need to build up. For example, for our beef export to the world. Paraguay, increasingly, year by year, we're working on strengthening the SENAXA, the Authority of Animal Health. And we are now recognized by the most important markets. United States, one of them. We are negotiating with Japan, South Korea, Mexico, and we got the access to Canada also this year. That represent the recognition of our institution in the way to the climate change is quite important, the committed of all countries. And that is the way in which we to increase the cooperation. We have to increase the opportunity to recognize those countries that contribute to decrease the emissions and to give them the example that we need to know the policies to protect environment for the development of the well environment system, but not to protect trade. That is one important issue that we are promoting, and we are really committed on that.
Well, Minister Ramirez Lezcano, thank you very much for coming here and telling us a lot about how you, with your colleagues from the cabinet and the leadership of Santiago Peña, are working in building institutions, taking advantage of Paraguay's richness in foodstuff, in renewable energy, etc., for the good of Paraguay, for the good of the region, and for the good of the world, and how eventually in this campaign that you're launching, you will be trying to bring all of that to the OAS, and given the position of Paraguay and through your leadership in negotiating with a very heterogeneous landscape of ideologies, political leaderships, etc. in Latin America, you have been able to achieve important successes. And your aim to bring in that to the OAS to basically try to build a regional position on the key issues that the region needs to develop, to integrate, to advance democracy and human rights. And we wish you the best in that process. And we hope to host you. And we will tell the same thing to the other candidates to host you here when you take the leadership of the OAS. And good luck on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you all. We invite you to join us out here in the hallway.
Gracias. No. Muchas suerte.